Welcome to Kansas Ag Report with your host, Bryan Hallman.
Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Bryan Hallman, and here's our lineup for today's show. In Ag News, we'll take a look at local and national headlines affecting Kansas farmers. In our Ag feature, Ken Rahjes sits down with Kansas Farm Bureau to talk ag data. Inside Kansas Ag has a report from Kansas Soybean Commission on China's support of Kansas soybean farmers, and Farm Bureau updates us on their Ditch the Rule campaign. And in news you need to know, Kansas Livestock Association gives us our weekly update. We'll look back at last week's market activity with the guys from Paragon, and we'll let you know about important events coming up around the state of Kansas. Glad you could join us.
Closed captioning brought to you by Dick Edwards in Manhattan, selling America's #1 truck, the Ford F-150, for over 30 years. DickEdwardsAuto.com.
Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers. kansassoybeans.org.
Ag Risk Solutions. Experience, knowledge, integrity. Your crop insurance solution, Ag Risk Solutions. Dick Edwards Auto Plaza in Junction City, home of this year's Motor Trend Truck of the Year, Ram Truck. DickEdwardsAuto.com.
Here's our national headlines for this week in Ag News. The National Corn Growers Association added a new resource to its website called Take Action on Weeds to help farmers with herbicide resistance issues. The resource offers a wide array of information developed over several years to help farmers increase their understanding of current best management practices such as field scouting, tillage, and equipment cleaning. The U.S. inventory of hogs and pigs on June 1st was 62.1 million head. This was down 5% from the same time last year. Market hog inventory was also down 5% from 2013. The March through May 2014 Kansas pig crop was down 3%. The USDA has a new website for beginning farmers and ranchers with in-depth information on how to increase access to land and capital, select risk management tools, and access USDA's education and technical support programs. The website will also feature case studies of previous beginning farmers who have successfully utilized the USDA's resources to start or expand their operation. More information is available at usda.gov/new farmers. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack announced that as of June 17th, the U.S. and Hong Kong have agreed to new terms that will permit the export of all U.S. beef and beef products to Hong Kong. These new terms are consistent with Hong Kong's import regulations used prior to December of 2003. And in local news, groups belonging to the Kansas Agricultural Alliance are calling on Governor Brownback, the Kansas Attorney General, and the Kansas Congressional Delegation to join forces against the federally proposed Waters of the U.S. rule. According to KAA leadership, the proposal would infringe on state sovereignty by expanding federal jurisdiction over ponds and ditches in Kansas, including those on privately owned property of farmers, ranchers, and ag businesses. Kansas grain farmers took a big hit in 2013 due to drought, causing much lower grain prices, resulting in the lowest net income levels since 2009. On the flip side, livestock producers saw an income boost due to the lower grain prices and higher meat prices. The Brazilian government announced last week that it was lifting the 10% tariff on up to 1 million metric tons of wheat from non-regional sources through August of 2015. Brazil imports around 260 million bushels of wheat each year, putting them as one of the world's top wheat buyers. The announcement came just weeks after a group of Brazilian executives from the largest flour mills in Brazil visited Kansas to learn more about the condition of the U.S. hard red winter wheat crop, as well as the wheat supply system. Up next in our Ag feature, Ken Rahjes sits down with Ryan Flickner and Mark Nelson from Kansas Farm Bureau to talk ag data. You're watching Kansas Ag Report. Please stay tuned. If you'd like to advertise your business on Kansas Ag Report, give us a call at 785-554-5974.
This segment brought to you by Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. GrassandGrain.com.
A.B. Flint Motor Company, selling quality used cars and trucks in Southeast Topeka at 32nd and South Kansas Avenue. Integrity Gun and Pawn, 2 Topeka locations specializing in firearms and training. igpawn.com to learn more. Kansas Weed Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for weeds. Online at kswheat.com.
Over the past 30 years, Dick Edwards in Manhattan has been building strong personal relationships, starting the moment you walk through the door with a sales team committed to meeting your car buying needs and carrying over into our service department with technicians able to handle all of your vehicle's upkeep. We've always been upfront and honest with our pricing, offering amazing financing offers and warranty packages. If you've shopped with us before, you know that the customer always comes first. Stop in and see us. Dick Edwards in Manhattan, 2 miles east of the Town Center Mall on Highway 24.
American innovation is being driven in places you might not expect by people like Brent Hayek, an Oklahoma family farmer who recently set a world land speed record in a Ford Super Duty pickup truck powered by renewable B20 biodiesel. Advanced performance is here now, putting America on the fast track to more jobs and energy independence. Biodiesel, America's advanced biofuel.
At Ag Risk Solutions, we have been helping our clients make better crop insurance decisions since 1981. We always focus on helping you find the best coverage options for your farm, and it will give you peace of mind knowing you have a partner you can trust. To learn more about our agency, please visit our website, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter. Ag Risk Solutions. Experience, knowledge, integrity. Your crop insurance solution.
Ag Risk Solutions is an equal opportunity provider.
Trending now at Dick Edwards Auto Plaza, Kia and Dodge, Ford and Jeep, all at one location. Kia, affordable, stylish, reliable. Ram, rugged, spacious, powerful. Ford, legendary, dependable, tough. Jeep, off-road, on-road, limitless possibilities. Dick Edwards Auto Plaza, I-70 and Highway 77 in Junction City.
Here at Blue River Traders, we have the greatest selection of rustic and western furniture in Kansas.
At Blue River Traders, you can select from an inventory of rustic lodge or western furnishings. With a designer on hand, Blue River Traders will help create the look you desire.
Today's production agriculture, with it, brings lots of data. And what to do with that data, who controls that data, who owns that data. That's our topic now. We're joined by a couple of staff members from the Kansas Farm Bureau. Mark Nelson, the Director of Commodities, and Ryan Flickner, who is Senior Director of Public Policy. Well, Mark, let's talk about that. That is probably a real concern of your members. Who owns, who controls this big ag data?
Yeah, I think in the bigger picture, a lot of times we're concerned really 3 areas. One is just data security, because a lot of these companies aren't as experienced in managing a lot of data, a lot of personal data, from financial data to obviously our farm data. But then also we've got concerns about, transparency and standardization of how do we use this data. The last thing we get concerned about, as an organization, is secondary uses of the data. And I guess related to all that is, who owns the data. I think there's no doubt that my farm data, the data, 30 pounds of N, what I'm putting on, that's my data. Anything collected by me, by my equipment, is my data. And most companies don't disagree. But where we start getting a little bit of a concern and definitionally is who owns aggregated data. Once we throw data together for, say, 10,000 farms, a lot of times the companies that are doing this and working with us, they kind of consider that data. And so, we've got a little bit of concerns about that, because still some of that may be geotagged, and so it's still revealing some personal information about us. The other concern we have with that is on aggregated data is that, you think about it. What is the value if I know that 80% of the U.S. corn crop is planted right when it should have been and under just fabulous conditions? We may know that. These companies may know that. I'll know that on my operation. But again, someone who's aggregating it knows that for multiple farms across many states. They know that by the end of June. And the first USDA crop report doesn't come out until August that actually has objective yield data. So all of a sudden, you know, who has this data and what they might do with it, and again, that gets into that secondary uses, is a big concern.
Well, Ryan, as we look at the possible legislative opportunities, is this something really that even should be legislated?
Well, I think that's what we're trying to determine right now. At the AFBF annual convention down in San Antonio this last January was the first opportunity and avenue that AFBF, as a collection of 51 state and Puerto Rico organizations, really took the first step in trying to wrap their heads around what should be regulated.
We're talking with the folks from the Kansas Farm Bureau about who controls, who owns, and what to do about that big agriculture data. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
This segment brought to you by Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. Farmers Insurance, your best protection against the unexpected. Call Agent Dan Key at 785-408-5459. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. Blue River Traders, the finest selection of Western-style furniture for your home. BlueRiverTraders.com.
We are talking agriculture data with staff members from the Kansas Farm Bureau, and Ryan Flickner, who is Senior Director of Public Policy, and Mark Nelson, Director of Commodities. Well, Ryan, let's talk about big data, not only agriculture, but personal. Do those things kind of mix together? Are we talking about the same thing?
I think we are. We're really struggling right now with kind of the older generation of farmers and ranchers kind of moving aside and letting the younger farmer and rancher take hold. And the young farmer and rancher group that we work with on a daily basis, these are some extremely technologically savvy individuals. They've grown up in the computer age. They've been having a cell phone in their hand for more or less the last decade, and that transition is really occurring to the farm. And as our private companies and our publicly traded companies start realizing the value of that data, that's what we're really struggling with to comprehend and figure out who owns the data and who should benefit and receive some reciprocity and some benefit of that monetary gain.
Mark, as we focus in on agriculture data, and if those numbers based on other companies and what they can glean, if that gets out there, that could really have an impact on farmers' opportunity to markets and maybe what we see prices of commodities.
Absolutely. I think this is a lot of this data is market moving data and competes directly with what USDA works to do. Things like crop condition. But a lot of these companies are working with producers to create yield forecasts so that in season they can continue to manage that crop. Well, again, on the individual side, that's great. It helps me do a better job of managing my inputs, helping the environment, helping my bottom line. But again, when we aggregate that, and this company says, I own this information, these analytics, these forecasts, well then what are they going to be doing with that data? Again, the first forecast of objective yield forecast from USDA is in August, but a lot of these companies are creating yield forecasts as early as the 1st of July for these farmers. If they aggregate that, they have market moving data. What are they going to do with it? Who owns it? I think these are critical questions for agriculture.
Those critical questions will be addressed at a conference coming up in Kansas City, correct, Ryan?
Yes, Ken. On July 17th, the Kansas City Agribusiness Council will be hosting a Big Data Challenges and Opportunities Conference, and we have some individuals from Kansas that will be on the panel, as well as Mary Kay Thatcher from American Farm Bureau Federation will be a moderator on that panel as well.
So which one of you will want to tackle this one? How soon will we see some definitive answers on who owns, who controls, or do you think we'll be at a point where we will have some sort of agreement that share up to a certain level, somewhat what we do with those that are participating in USDA reports when we do our weekly crop updates?
Well, I don't know how fast it's going to be going. I know, Farm Bureau, American Farm Bureau has been working pretty hard with a lot of the companies asking for and sharing, our concerns about this, working to get it. But I'm not sure when we're going to see this done. The sooner the better.
Okay, thank you both. We've been talking with Mark Nelson, Director of Commodities, and Ryan Flickner, who is Senior Director of Public Policy with the Kansas Farm Bureau. I'm Ken Rahjes for AgView.net. You're watching the Kansas Ag Report.
Chinese purchasers consistently buy 1/4 of the U.S. soybean crop every year, so it's understandable that some in the industry are concerned about recent reports that China has been turning away and defaulting on orders. The good news is China already has purchased 220 million bushels more soybeans than it had by this time last year. A few weeks ago, a Chinese delegation agreed to purchase 7 million bushels of U.S. soybeans worth about $100 million. And analysts predict Chinese demand will remain strong. Still, the soybean checkoff continues to work to increase demand in other countries. Around the world, people want more protein in their diets as their incomes grow. Here in Kansas, the checkoff's international marketing efforts primarily are enacted through the International Grains Program at Kansas State University. The Soybean Commission also works with the U.S. Soybean Export Council and does humanitarian projects through the World Initiative for Soy and Human Health. With international demand so high, the value of U.S. soybeans never has been stronger. It is growing faster than demand for any other commodity. This year, 60% of the crop will be exported as whole beans, soybean meal, and soybean oil, and that's a record. The soybean checkoff continues to diversify demand for U.S. soybeans, both domestically and abroad, to help maximize the profit opportunities for all U.S. soybean farmers. For more information about the checkoff, visit kansassoybeans.org on the web.
The Environmental Protection Agency is attempting yet another federal land grab that will hurt Kansas landowners, businesses, and damage our economy. The EPA and Army Corps of Engineers have proposed a rule that will force these agencies to use the Federal Clean Water Act to dictate how landowners utilize their land. If the EPA does not fulfill their end of the bargain, then citizen lawsuits and the courts will ultimately decide how the landowner can manage their own private land. The proposal creates a situation where any drop of water that runs into a river or a lake will be under the EPA and Army Corps' power. This includes farm ditches, terrace channels, flood control levees, and golf course ponds. It even includes farm ground located within a floodplain. The EPA wants to regulate all of these. Home builders, developers, country clubs, farmers, as well as county township maintenance crews will all have to get a federal permit before working around any of these waters. If they don't, they could be fined more than $37,000 per day for simple tasks like putting up a fence, spraying for weeds, or moving any dirt. Fines like that would drive any small business out of business. And there are environmental activists out there who want to do just this. We can stop this proposed rule before it's finalized, but we must act soon.
This segment brought to you by Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. A.B. Flint Motor Company, selling quality used cars and trucks in southeast Topeka at 32nd and South Kansas Avenue. Integrity Gun and Pawn, 2 Topeka locations specializing in firearms and training. igpawn.com to learn more. Impact Satellite, your local authorized DirecTV dealer. Impact Satellite at 785-554-5974.
Imagine having someone help you pick the best corn hybrids for every field on your farm. Your Oldie representative can combine your data with his data to offer a field-by-field prescription. Contact Oldie Seed today at 877-692-4555.
Trending now at Dick Edwards Auto Plaza, Kia and Dodge, Ford and Jeep, all at one location. Kia, affordable, stylish, reliable. Ram, rugged, spacious, powerful. Ford, legendary, dependable, tough. Jeep, off-road, on-road, limitless possibilities. Dick Edwards Auto Plaza, I-70 and Highway 77 in Junction City.
Tammy the Pro Home Plus is all about providing warmth and kindness to aging individuals who find it difficult to live on their own. Tammy's team is made up of experienced caregivers and nurses committed to the highest level of individualized care, focusing on health and well-being, and assisting with nutrition, grooming, medications, therapies, and daily living needs, all in a warm, caring environment. Call Tammy the Pro Home Plus today at 785-383-7094 to learn how we can help.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
Over the past 30 years, Dick Edwards in Manhattan has been building strong personal relationships, starting the moment you walk through the door with a sales team committed to meeting your car buying needs and carrying over into our service department with technicians able to handle all of your vehicle's upkeep. We've always been upfront and honest with our pricing, offering amazing financing offers and warranty packages. If you've shopped with us before, you know that the customer always comes first. Stop in and see us. Dick Edwards in Manhattan, 2 miles east of the Town Center Mall on Highway 24.
This hog is head over hoof for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one hog isn't that impressive, but suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing. Our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
Since 1983, the Hydrobed has been utilized on cattle operations throughout North America. The Hydrobed equips your 3-quarter or 1-ton truck for hay handling and feeding. Variable speed cable controls or the optional wireless remote enable you to haul, transport, and unroll 2 round bales weighing up to 3,000 pounds each. A mechanical free float automatically compensates for uneven ground and out of round bales, isolating you and the truck from impact of bale unrolling. To find out how the Hydrobed can improve your feeding efficiency, call or visit us on the web at triple-c-inc.com.
KLA has filed written comments asking the Environmental Protection Agency to withdraw its interpretive rule regarding the Clean Water Act farm and ranch exemption from Section 404 permits. The federal act already contains a broad exemption for normal farming and ranching activities to prevent agriculture from having to obtain unnecessary permits. When EPA released its proposed rule defining waters of the United States, it simultaneously released the interpretive rule. While EPA claimed the interpretive rule would help agriculture by clarifying the exemption, it actually narrowed the otherwise broad exemption by limiting it to only 56 approved Natural Resources Conservation Service practices. The interpretive rule would require farmers and ranchers to comply with each of these standards and receive NRCS approval before engaging in normal farming and ranching activities like grazing, prescribed burning, and terracing. KLA and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association believe the interpretive rule would increase producer compliance costs and detract from the NRCS mission. On a related note, the Kansas Ag Alliance recently sent a letter to Governor Sam Brownback, Kansas Attorney General Derek Schmidt, and the Kansas Congressional Delegation asking for their assistance in combating EPA's proposed rule defining waters of the United States. The Ag Alliance's membership includes KLA and 13 other Kansas ag organizations.
Hi, I'm Bryan Holder with Paragon Ag. Every quarter, the USDA surveys those still holding grain in an attempt to accurately estimate year-end stocks, and with this quarter to update planted acreage numbers. Last week's report found 3.8 billion bushels of corn, and farmers planted 91.6 million acres. Neither number coming in overtly bearish, but price still fell. Corn suffered from a shocking soybean number, and as long as we have excellent growing conditions, new crop corn will continue to be viewed as bearish. The pollination forecasts are currently not showing any weather threats. The planted acreage estimates for soybeans were 82.1 million acres. USDA came in at an 84.8, a very bearish number, now a full 8 million acres more that farmers planted to beans than they did last year. USDA also came out guns blazing with a 99.1% harvested number, indicating they're not concerned for the current wet conditions. These numbers tell the trade that we are set for a dramatic change in soybean supply, potentially ballooning to a 400 million bushel carryout. A hot, dry August would be the trump card, but for now, soybeans have joined corn and is clearly a bearish market. For wheat, the gravity is to blame for the lower prices lacking any new bullish news, and with corn in a weak position, wheat is struggling to gain traction on its own. For advice on what to do with this knowledge, give us a call at Paragon, 888-452-8751.
Closed captioning brought to you by Dick Edwards in Manhattan, selling America's #1 truck, the Ford F-150, for over 30 years. DickEdwardsAuto.com.
Kansas Soybean Commission, the soybean checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers. kansassoybeans.org.
Ag Risk Solutions. Experience, knowledge, integrity. Your crop insurance solution, Ag Risk Solutions. Dick Edwards Auto Plaza in Junction City, home of this year's Motor Trend Truck of the Year, Ram Truck. DickEdwardsAuto.com.
Well, Trevor, that's our show for today. We'd like to thank all of you who have followed Trevor's journey and supported him along the way to the 2014 Special Olympics USA Games in New Jersey. He worked very hard and came back a gold medalist. We're very proud of you, son.
Thanks, Dad.
So with that said, we hope you'll join us each week for more news and information about agriculture in the state of Kansas. I'm Bryan Hallman.
I'm Trevor Hallman, and thanks for watching.
Imagine having someone help you pick the best corn hybrids for every field on your farm. Your Oldie representative can combine your data with his data to offer a field-by-field prescription. Contact Oldie Seed today at 877-692-4555.
Tammy the Pro Home Plus is all about providing warmth and kindness to aging individuals who find it difficult to live on their own. Tammy's team is made up of experienced caregivers and nurses committed to the highest level of individualized care, focusing on health and well-being, and assisting with nutrition, grooming, medications, therapies, and daily living needs, all in a warm, caring environment. Call Tammy the Pro Home Plus today at 785-383-7094 to learn how we can help.